Hello, everyone. This is Jimmy Kimmel. I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. A document leaked from the White House 3 days ago. It's called Continuity of Government Protocol, 2026 Electoral Contingency. And buried on page 47 of that document is a single sentence that should terrify every American. In the event of a national emergency, electoral processes may be suspended indefinitely. They're planning to cancel the elections. Now, before we go any further, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button for Future in View right now. Just you. Because what I'm about to share with you is the most important story I've ever covered. This isn't about politics. This isn't about Democrat versus Republican. This is about whether we're going to remain a democracy or whether we're going to become something else. So subscribe, stay with me, because you need to hear every word of this. All right, let's talk about this document. 3 days ago, a White House staffer walked out of the West Wing with a copy of a 73-page document. This document was marked for internal use only, not for distribution. It's a contingency plan. Essentially, it's a playbook for what the administration would do in various emergency scenarios, natural disasters, terrorist attacks, pandemics, that kind of thing. Every administration has documents like this. It's standard protocol. You plan for the worst-case scenarios so you're not caught off guard. But this document, the one that leaked 3 days ago, has a section that's never been in any previous contingency plan. Section 12, Electoral Process Suspension Authority. Let me read you exactly what it says, word for word. In the event of a national emergency, as determined by the President under the National Emergencies Act of 1976, and in consultation with the Secretary of Defense and the Attorney General, the President may exercise executive authority to temporarily suspend electoral processes at the federal, state, and local levels until such time as the emergency has been resolved and normal democratic functions can safely resume. Read that again. Suspend electoral processes. That means canceling elections. And here's the kicker. There's no definition of what constitutes an emergency serious enough to trigger this authority. There's no timeline for how long the suspension would last. There's no congressional oversight mechanism. It's just the president determines there's an emergency and elections are canceled. Now, let me tell you why this document exists. According to my sources inside the White House, this plan was developed over the past 6 months by a small group of Trump's closest advisors. Not the full cabinet, not the normal White House counsel, a small, hand-picked group. The people involved include Stephen Miller, Trump's senior advisor, Jeff Clark, who Trump tried to install as Attorney General during his first term, John Eastman, the lawyer who helped draft the plan to overturn the 2020 election. These are not mainstream conservatives. These are not traditional Republicans. These are people who have repeatedly shown that they're willing to bend or break the rules to keep Trump in power. Here's how they justify this plan. According to the document, the legal basis comes from 3 sources. First, the National Emergencies Act. This law gives the president broad authority to declare emergencies and take special actions. It's been used dozens of times by various presidents for things like freezing assets, restricting travel, mobilizing the National Guard. But it's never been used to cancel elections. Second, the Insurrection Act. This law allows the president to deploy military forces inside the United States to suppress civil unrest. It was last invoked in 1992 during the LA riots. Third, and this is the scary part, they cite something called inherent executive authority. This is the idea that the president has powers not explicitly written in the Constitution, but implied by the role of commander-in-chief. It's a legal theory that most constitutional scholars reject. But Trump's lawyers are arguing that in a true national emergency, the president has unlimited authority to do whatever's necessary to preserve the government, including suspending elections. Now, let me tell you what kind of emergencies they're considering. The document lists several scenarios that could trigger this suspension authority. Scenario 1, widespread civil unrest following contested election results. Translation, if Trump loses in 2026 and his supporters riot, he could declare an emergency and suspend the next election. Scenario 2, coordinated foreign interference compromising electoral integrity. Translation, Trump could claim that foreign hackers or foreign propaganda has made the election unreliable and therefore it needs to be canceled. Scenario 3, pandemic or public health crisis preventing safe voting. We just lived through this with COVID. We managed to have an election in 2020. But Trump's team is arguing that in a future pandemic, elections could be too dangerous. Scenario 4, economic collapse requiring continuity of leadership. This one's particularly disturbing. They're arguing that if the economy crashes, changing leadership would make things worse, so elections should be postponed. Do you see the pattern here? Every single one of these scenarios is either vague enough to be triggered at will or could be manufactured by the administration itself. Let me tell you what constitutional experts are saying about this. I spoke with 3 constitutional law professors in the past 48 hours. All of them said the same thing. This plan is unconstitutional, period. The Constitution is very clear. Article 1, Section 4 gives Congress, not the President, the authority to regulate the time, place, and manner of federal elections. The 20th Amendment specifies exactly when presidential terms end, January 20th, no exceptions. There is no provision in the Constitution for suspending elections, none, because the founders understood that if you give the government the power to cancel elections, you don't have a democracy anymore. You have a dictatorship. But here's what Trump's lawyers are betting on. They're betting that in a real crisis, in a moment of genuine fear and chaos, the American people will accept this. They're betting that if Trump goes on television and says, we're facing an unprecedented emergency, and for the safety of the nation, we need to postpone the election, enough people will go along with it. They're betting that the Supreme Court, which has a conservative majority, will defer to executive authority in a national security crisis. And they're betting that by the time the legal challenges work their way through the courts, it'll be too late. The election will have been canceled. Trump will still be in power, and the precedent will have been set. Now, let me tell you what happened at the meeting at Camp David 11 days ago. According to someone who was present, Trump gathered his key advisors to discuss 2026. The polls aren't looking good for him. His approval ratings are mixed. There's a strong possibility that if the election happens on schedule, he could lose. So they discussed options. One option, actually improve his performance. Better policies, better messaging, win the election legitimately. That option was dismissed almost immediately. The second option, challenge the results if he loses, claim fraud, file lawsuits, try to overturn the outcome through the courts. That's what he did in 2020. It didn't work. Too many judges, including judges he appointed, rejected the claims. The third option, don't let the election happen in the first place. That's the option they're pursuing. Here's the plan as it was outlined in that meeting. Starting in mid-2026, probably around July or August, the administration will begin laying the groundwork for an emergency declaration. They'll start talking about threats, foreign interference, cyber attacks, civil unrest, economic instability. They'll use friendly media outlets to amplify these threats, make them seem bigger than they are, create a sense of crisis. Then, in October, about a month before the election, something will happen. Maybe it's a real crisis. Maybe it's something manufactured. Maybe it's just Trump declaring that intelligence agencies have detected an imminent threat. And he'll go on television and say, for the safety and security of the American people, I am declaring a national emergency. And under the authority granted to me by Congress and the Constitution, I am temporarily suspending the federal election scheduled for November 3rd. Now, you might be thinking, Jimmy, he can't just do that. Congress would stop him, the courts would stop him, the military would stop him. Let me address each of those. Congress, Republicans currently control the House. Even if they lose control in the next election, Trump is betting that in a declared emergency, enough members of Congress will support him out of fear of looking weak on national security. The courts. Cases take time. By the time a challenge reaches the Supreme Court, weeks or months will have passed. And Trump's lawyers are betting that in a real crisis, the court will defer to executive authority. The military. This is the big one. According to the leaked document, part of the plan involves invoking the Insurrection Act and deploying military forces to maintain order during the emergency. They're betting that most military leaders will follow orders rather than risk being charged with insubordination. Let me tell you what one of the lawyers involved in drafting this plan said. According to my source, this lawyer told the group at Camp David, the key is speed. We move fast. We declare the emergency. We suspend the election. We deploy the military. We control the narrative. And by the time anyone can mount an effective legal or political challenge, we're in control of the situation. That's a direct quote. We're in control of the situation. They're not even pretending this is about protecting democracy. They're openly strategizing about how to seize power. Now, let me tell you what happened to the White House staffer who leaked this document. They contacted a journalist. They said, I can't stay silent about this. The American people need to know what's being planned. They handed over the document, all 73 pages, and then they disappeared. Not literally disappeared, but they've gone dark. They're not responding to calls. They're not at their apartment. According to people who know them, they're terrified because leaking classified information, even information about an unconstitutional plan, is still a federal crime. And Trump's Justice Department is already investigating. They're trying to find out who leaked the document so they can prosecute them. Think about that. They're more concerned about punishing the whistleblower than they are about addressing the fact that they're planning to cancel elections. Let me tell you what's at stake here. If Trump succeeds in suspending the 2026 election, it's over. Not just that election, democracy itself. Because once you establish the precedent that the president can cancel elections during an emergency, you've created a loophole that will never close. Every future president will know, if I'm about to lose power, I can just declare an emergency and stay in office. That's not democracy. That's authoritarianism with extra steps. Let me tell you what happened in other countries when leaders canceled elections. In Venezuela, Hugo Chavez used emergency powers to consolidate control. What started as temporary measures became permanent. Now Venezuela's elections are a joke. The government controls everything. In Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan declared a state of emergency after a failed coup attempt. He used that emergency to arrest opponents, shut down newspapers, and consolidate power. Turkey was a democracy. Now it's an autocracy. In the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law in 1972. He suspended elections. He ruled as a dictator for 14 years. This is the pattern. Leaders declare emergencies. They suspend democratic processes. They promise it's temporary, and then they never give up power. That's what Trump is planning to do. Now, let me tell you what we can do about this. Now, first, we expose it. We make sure every American knows about this plan. We don't let them do this in secret. Second, we demand action from Congress. We demand that they pass legislation explicitly prohibiting the suspension of elections under any circumstances. Third, we demand that the courts preemptively rule on this. We need a clear legal precedent that says, no, the president cannot cancel elections, ever. Fourth, we organize. We make it clear that if Trump tries to implement this plan, there will be mass peaceful resistance. Millions of Americans in the streets demanding that democracy be preserved. Let me tell you what's happening in real America right now while Trump is planning to cancel elections. In Wisconsin, a teacher named Sarah told reporters she's terrified about what's happening to the country. She said, I teach civics. I teach my students about democracy, about the Constitution, about how our system works, and now I'm watching the president plan to tear it all down. In Texas, a veteran named Michael said, I served 20 years in the military to protect this country and the Constitution, and now I'm watching a president who wants to suspend elections. This is what I fought against in other countries. I never thought I'd see it here. These are real Americans, people who believe in democracy, people who are watching in horror as Trump prepares to dismantle it. All right, my friend, that's what's in that leaked document. That's Trump's plan to stay in power. That's the constitutional crisis we're heading toward. And now you know. So what are you going to do? Are you going to share this information? Are you going to talk to your friends and family? Are you going to contact your representatives and demand action? Or are you going to hope someone else does something? Because I'll tell you right now, if we don't fight this, if we don't stand up and say, no, this is not acceptable, then Trump will do it. He'll suspend the elections. He'll stay in power, and American democracy will die. I'm not being dramatic. I'm not exaggerating. This is real. The document is real. The plan is real. The threat is real. And if we don't take it seriously, we're going to wake up in November 2026 and find out there's no election. And by then, it'll be too late. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Share this video. Get this information out to as many people as possible. Contact your representatives. Demand that they address this threat. Talk to your friends and family. Make sure they understand what's at stake. And most importantly, stay informed, stay engaged. Don't look away, because democracy doesn't defend itself. We have to defend it. Thanks for being here with me. Thanks for caring about the future of this country. Thanks for understanding that some things are worth fighting for. and democracy, the right to vote, the peaceful transfer of power, those are worth fighting for. I'll be back soon with more from Future in View. Keep watching, stay informed, stay engaged. And remember, they're counting on us to be silent. They're counting on us to be passive. They're counting on us to give up. Don't give them that satisfaction. Take care of yourself and your family. Be well, my friend, and get ready to fight for democracy.